Today we're going to factor trinomials. So remember, a trinomial has three terms, three monomials. But first, let's go review. When we multiply two binomials, we have to do double distribution, or some of you like to do it in the box. Either way, you're going to get x squared, 3x, 4x, and 12. So these like terms, we add together, we combine, and we get 7x. So multiplying two binomials gets us a trinomial. So today we're going to go backwards. I'm going to give you the trinomial, and you're going to split it into the two binomial factors. Remember, those are called factors that multiply to it. So let's try doing the opposite. Let's try it with a box. So in the box, I know that I have x squared and 14, and I know that these two have to add to 9x. So it's easy to say it has to start with the x and that these are positive because I've got two plus signs. I have to have two positive numbers. So what are the two numbers that multiply to 14 but add to 9? Well, there's a little, let's see, I like to do it with an x. So we need to multiply to the 14 but add to the 9. So we can look at the factors of 14. 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Which two add to 9? Wouldn't it be those two? So I have to have a 2 and a 7. If I multiply those, I get 2x and 7x. That adds to 9x. Therefore, my answer is the trinomial, is the two binomial factors, x plus 2, x plus 7. So I went backwards. I found the two binomials that multiply to this trinomial. That's called factoring. I factored the trinomial into two binomials. So a polynomial with three terms is called a trinomial. These are often factored. Now, often, there's going to be a rare exception that we'll go over. These are often factored as the product of two binomials. This is important. Always check for a GCF first. I'm not going to give you one today, hint, hint. We will tomorrow. But always check first. Then find two numbers that add to the middle but multiply to the last. So here we have this trinomial. We want to find the two numbers that multiply to 24 but add to 11. So think of the factors. 1 and 24. That doesn't add to 11. 2 and 12. 3 and 8. Well, there it is. 3 and 8 add to 11. Once you find it, you don't have to keep listing the factors, although we could have had 4 and 6. So let's try that. Let's try x plus 3 and x plus 8. That gets x squared plus 3x plus 8x plus 24. X squared. These add to 11. Yes, that gets us the answer. So x plus 3, x plus 8 is our answer. All right, let's factor this one. What adds to 9? What multiplies to 9 and adds to 6? Well, my only choices are 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So this would have to be x plus 3 and x plus 3. Now, couldn't I write it as x plus 3 squared because I multiplied something by itself? Okay, let's look at this one. It doesn't have plus signs. It has two minuses. So this time I want something that multiplies to negative 21 and adds to negative 4. If I want to multiply to a negative, I have to have one of each. One positive, one negative. And if a positive and a negative are going to add to get a negative, the negative must be the bigger one. So if I have 1 and 21, it would be 1 and negative 21. And then 3 and negative 7. Well, I think 3 and negative 7 are going to do it for us. X plus 3, X plus, whoops, Mrs. Jones. The negative is your minus. Now, that is your binomial. We factored it. Let's check it. If we check it, we get x squared, 3x, negative 7x, and negative 21, and those add to negative 4. All right, we've got to multiply to positive 12, but add to negative 7. How, if you multiply two positives, you can't get, they won't add to a negative. And if you multiply a positive times a negative, you would get a negative here. So what else multiplies to a positive? Wouldn't it be a negative and a negative? So these have to both be negative. So I could have negative 1 and negative 12, negative 2, negative 6. That adds to negative 8. What about negative 3, negative 4? That adds to negative 7. So x minus 3, x minus 4. Because negative 3 and negative 4 multiply to positive 12, but add to negative 7. So if you're going to end with a positive, your signs have to be the same. But if the middle's a negative, they have to both be negative. Whoops, let's turn the page. And let's do one with a positive in the middle and a negative at the end. I've got to multiply to negative 24 and add to 2. In order to multiply to a negative, you have to have one of each, one positive, one negative. If they're going to add to 2, a positive 2, the positive has to be bigger. So this would be 24 and negative 1, 12 and negative 2. Wow, my brain can't do this backwards. Negative 3 and 8, negative 4 and 6. Wouldn't it be negative 4 and 6? 6 minus 4 is 2. And 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. Let's do this one. So we have to multiply to a negative 30, and we have to add to what? Well, there's nothing there, so that's a negative 1. So remember, if we're going to multiply to a negative, we have to have one of each. And if your answers, if they're going to add to a negative, then the negative has to be bigger. So it would be 1 and negative 30, 2 and negative 15, 3 and negative 10. How about 5 and negative 6? Well, that makes negative 1. So x plus 5, x minus 6 is your answer. And let's do one more. We will do this one. We have to multiply to 1 and add to negative 5. Well, first of all, the only things that multiply to 1 are 1 and 1. Is there any way that can add to negative 5? No. So this one cannot, sometimes you'll run into one that cannot be factored. We could say that it's prime because prime numbers their only factors are themselves and 1.